Welcome to the Old Republic Podcast.
We are a podcast that discusses Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, general sci-fi, and about the stories that inspired a galaxy.
Consider this a spoiler warning for everything under the sun and the twin suns in that galaxy far, far away.
This is where the fun begins.
Well, hello, everyone. Today we are discussing The Last Jedi's hero's journey. And how are you doing, Brian?
I am doing well. Just wrapped up watching another watch through of The Last Jedi shortly. Not too long ago. So that was exciting, and yeah, excited to be going through the hero's journey of this film. Again, this one's was a little tricky. If you listen to our last episode about The Force Awakens, that one was a little tricky. This one's a little tricky too, because I think in a lot of cases, as we've been going through the stories here, the Star Wars saga. You could make the case that there are definitely, some overlap of who the hero is in the story, but this one definitely is broken down into three individual hero stories, I think.
Yeah, for sure. The Last Jedi is, like a divisive film. It certainly gets people talking, but personally, for me, I've always found it to be the most solid movie in the sequel trilogy. I can understand why some people might not like it. But there are aspects of it being a mixed bag, not mixed bag, but mixed bag. But yeah, I guess, did you see any KOTOR similarities?
The KOTOR similarities that I saw, or at least kind of the links to KOTOR here, are really kind of revolving around Luke Skywalker, and kind of the things that he has there, the relic, the crystal that he has, kind of that inlay in the floor there on the cave in Ahch-To, stuff like that. And a couple of those we mentioned in the KOTOR is 110% canon, or whatever we ended up calling that episode. So those were some fun links there. But story-wise, I didn't pick up on a ton of stuff. But what about you? Was there anything that stood out to you in terms of KOTOR to Last Jedi comparisons?
I guess it kind of reminded me like Rey and Kylo's Force connection of the Force bond.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what stood apart to me.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of is similar, I guess, obviously to Revan and Bastila's Force Bond, although we don't necessarily see it portrayed in exactly the same way. In KOTOR, it's portrayed more as like this kind of like dream sort of thing, whereas here in The Last Jedi, it's played out more in kind of a reality based sort of thing, and kind of in your head. I think Rey even says, "Get out of my head," or something like that along those lines in the film, which is kind of a more tie to KOTOR too, right? Between Freya and the Exile.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so yeah, there's connections. I think like in the next few years where maybe there'll be more that kind of people recognize kind of organically.
Hmm. So, The Last Jedi was released in December of 2017. It was directed by Ryan Johnson. It was originally supposed to be released in May, to correlate with all the other Star Wars films up until The Force Awakens, which released in December, but it got pushed back from May. I guess they didn't want it to overlap the release dates with Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, a film I've still not seen. Cassie keeps
Oh
telling me to watch
man.
it, and I still haven't, but they pushed it back. And apparently that worked out okay, because it ended up making $620 million US, 100 or $1.3 billion worldwide. At the time, it was the ninth highest grossing film of all time when it released. It was nominated for four Academy Awards: visual effects, original score, sound editing, and sound mixing. There's not a lot else about like the behind the scenes of The Last Jedi, though, because it went pretty smoothly. I think it started filming like at the beginning of the that year, and then it wrapped in like June of that year. So it's like a very neat, very tidy uh, kind of thing. So not a lot behind the scenes. I believe Ryan Johnson has a book coming out of like his director's notes and stuff like that for the film. I'm not sure when that's supposed to be coming out, but I've seen a lot of people are posting that like screenshots of it up on Amazon to pre-order. So.
Oh wow. Yeah, and that's cool. So yeah, it's funny because like The Last Jedi, like the title crawl kind of feels like Whiplash because it's kind of just like the last movie like literally ended like 5 minutes ago.
Right.
And
Yeah.
uh and I kind of think like, wanting to see that first shot with Luke, I can understand that. I think they could have just stretched the rules of Star Wars and started with that scene and
Mhm.
then maybe like had it like be at least a year later because it kind of just feels like the sequel trilogy. It's like you have The Force Awakens and then like 5 minutes later The Last Jedi and then a year later the Rise of Skywalker and I'm like this is too much. So
Yeah, that's true. It definitely does move the pace pretty quick here through this, especially like you said, kind of starting off straight away. So the ordinary world, the heroes seen in their everyday life. Um, for me, it's basically the title crawl, right? That's kind of the ordinary world, and then it just gets right into what everyone's doing, right? The resistance is getting ready to flee. The First Order is expanding their control, and Rey is attempting to recruit Luke Skywalker to the Resistance. It says, kind of those bullet points in the crawl, and for me, that's the basically the end of the ordinary world.
yeah. Um and then kind of like we kind of see like a lot of people die in the resistance and um yeah, like I think Hux being made a joke wasn't the best choice in The Last Jedi, but yeah, like the call to adventure, I kind of saw that as Rey asks Luke to be her master, and then also Poe wants to lead and Finn wants to find Rey. Um, that's what I saw it as. What did you see it as?
Yeah, so the call to adventure is the initiating incident of the story. And kind of like you, Cassie, I kind of went through this for each of the three characters because they're uh pretty much isolated within the film. And they're each kind of going on this character journey. Almost fully realized here for these three characters. You could look at like the original trilogy and be like, well, Han's going through a hero's journey, but it's not quite as, full and fluid as Luke Skywalker's is, or in the prequels, right? You could say, well, Qui-Gon's going on it, and so is Obi-Wan, but not quite to the same degree. But here it seems like they're all going through kind of their own character journey being fully realized. So yeah, so for me, the call to adventure is here kind of in this initial sort of dogfight thing that Poe's finding himself in, and Leia orders him to retreat, right, to pull the forces back, and he ignores that. So his call to adventure is her order there. For Finn, I think that his call to adventure is learning that this light speed tracking is happening, right? He kind of wakes up after this kind of initial battle when everyone's gotten off and the resistance has fled, and he kind of wakes up and in his little like body bag of back to there that he's in, and he goes and finds out that they're being able to be tracked through light speed. So I think that's the initiating incident for Finn, and then for Rey, I thought Rey's was a little trickier, but I think that her like specific call to adventure, because kind of her ordinary world, I guess, for this film is that she was going on behalf of the Resistance to find Luke Skywalker, and she kind of accomplishes that, right at the basically at the end of the last film, basically. So I think that her call to adventure is when Luke Skywalker asks, "Why are you here?" Right? Not because the Resistance sent you. Why you? Why are you here? And she says,
Yeah.
something has always been inside of me. So I think that is her actual call to adventure when she has to kind of own up to the reason that she felt so compelled to be the one that went to find Luke.
Yeah. Kind of like what I saw as refusal of the call was just like Luke didn't want to train any more Jedi. And then Kylo Ren is called weak by Snoke, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and you kind of see like Kylo like shatters his masks, his scar has kind of changed from, episode 7. I can kind of understand why they did it, but I'm like, it's so cool when we have things change every 5 seconds. Sometimes it's hard to keep uh, track. But we also get to see the origin of green milk at Galaxy's Edge. Um, Luke's regular day. Uh, we get to see that, and Rey is rejected more and more by Luke. So that's interesting.
That's right. Yeah, he goes and does some fishing. He like catapults across a cliff. That looks pretty cool. Yeah, so the refusal to the call, the hero experiences some hesitation to answer the call. So here for my kind of trio of characters, and certainly you could go through those with Kylo Ren as well. I think that he goes through a complete and full journey as well on the other side if you want to also bring him into account. But for me, the refusal of the call is Poe's demotion. There, Leia says, "What are you doing? You knucklehead, I told you to fall back and you didn't, and now all of our resistance heroes are dead. Thanks a lot for that." So he gets demoted. That's his refusal of the call. For me, Finn, his refusal of the call is that he knows that they're able to be tracked through hyperspace. So his kind of like adventure that he's setting himself out on is to basically get that beacon out of there so Rey doesn't come back and get trapped. His real refusal of the call then for me is basically the First Order, kind of surrounding that fleet and, getting them pinned down. So the fleet is pinned down. That's the refusal from without for Finn that I saw. And then for Rey, it's kind of the refusals from Luke, and there's a couple of them, but for me, kind of the pinnacle one there is she's asked him a couple of times and then finally he's just like, no, I'm not going to do this because the Jedi need to end,
Yeah.
very very matter of factly. So that's kind of the like the capstone of Luke's refusals to Rey.
Yeah. And I did like the part where Leia's trying to just tell Poe how to lead, not just how to blow stuff up all the time. Um, and that was always kind of interesting for me. And I think like it seems like Oscar Isaac seems to really like The Last Jedi, and I think he had like more to work with here, you know, than
Mhm.
maybe some of the other instances in the sequel trilogy.
See, so meeting with the mentor is next here, our fourth step. So the hero gains the
Okay.
supplies, knowledge, and confidence needed to commence the adventure. So, who are our mentors here, and how do those meetings shape up in your eyes, Cassia?
Yeah, so meeting with the mentor, Luke teaches Rey, and Rey and Kylo are connected. I kind of saw it as the Force trying to teach the galaxy new lessons, like connecting light and dark and trying to build something, and I think Luke is he's kind of like at the end of like his evolved Jedi-ness, he's trying to um impart like not just the dogma, but what he sees as like the truth of the Force.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what he's basically come to terms with, I guess, in his in time of isolation. Right, just realizing that, and he goes on to discuss the hubris of the Jedi and basically everything that uh they've tried to accomplish over the years. It's been a lot of failures. So maybe it's in the best interest of the galaxy to not have them around, which is a really interesting kind of thought experiment. It reminds me a lot of our conversation that we had about Kreia a couple weeks ago. So for me, the meeting of the mentors. So for Poe, I have here that Admiral Holdo is going to be taking over for Leia because I think that obviously, I think that Leia is a mentor for Poe, but I think that he really takes his real actual lessons from Holdo here in this film. Finn, meets Rose. Rose electrocutes him, basically, zaps him with that rod. Come on, Rose. He's just trying to get out of there to help Rey, but understandable, understandable. So I think Finn's mentor is Rose, and they're going to meet there in the escape pod bay that she's kind of keeping an eye on, and then Rey, obviously, her mentor in this film is Luke, and Luke, finally agrees to giving her three lessons. So I think that's kind of the moment when Luke switches from, being this character who is refusing his call, refusing Rey's call to being her actual mentor in this film.
Yeah. Yeah, because I kind of agree. We get to see Poe get instructed, by Leia and Holdo. Uh Kylo, learns a bit from Rey, learns a bit from Snoke. Rey's learning from Luke, and I would say also Kylo Ren, and
Mhm.
I think Finn and Rose are teaching each other, and Rose was like the sequel trilogy's Lando. I think her and her actress deserved much better. Um, I think like there are some aspects that could have been rewritten, like maybe so like the character didn't come across like as like nerdy sometimes, but I didn't have a problem with it, but yeah, it's sad like what happened to the actress and to the character.
Yeah, definitely, definitely unacceptable. What happened there in that instance? I like Rose as a character quite a bit. I think that she's very interesting. She has that great moment of loss at the very beginning of the film, which is why, of course, she's very agitated when she sees Finn trying to abandon ship there, everything that she's fought for and what she's sacrificed for, and they have to come to terms. And yeah, they're going to be able to teach one another quite a lot over the course of the film. So I think that Rose is a really good mentor for Finn, probably the mentor that he needs because he doesn't really get a mentor through the first film, through The Force Awakens, too much. Han Solo a little bit, but he's not really kind of learning the lessons. Even through the first film, he's very reluctant, and then kind of the character growth that Finn's going to go through here, which we'll get to shortly as we kind of get through more of the trials and tribulations of the characters. I don't think that he could have learned that from anyone but Rose. So
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, do you kind of think it was the Force or Snoke who connected Rey and Kylo?
that's a really good question. It's hard to say. Uh, because on one hand, you see, I guess, in a sense that they have some sort of connection, and they do. We saw a little bit of that, some hints of that in The Force Awakens there when he captures her, and they're going back and forth with trying to do like the mind probe and kind of that stuff like that. So on one hand, I think it makes sense that it would just be the two of them. They're intrinsically linked. We find out that they are a Force dyad, by the time the third film comes around. So certainly, I think that it could have been them, but I think it would be naive to think that Snoke didn't at least know of this was going on or have some sort of knowledge in it. Snoke seems to be some sort of a puppeteering type of a character. So I think that probably it was just something that Kylo and Rey were doing on their own. But I feel like Snoke probably knew that it was happening and kind of knew. Ultimately would either lead to or kind of let it play out, right? You kind of similar to Palpatine, you kind of set the game in motion and let it play out. So
I kind of personally thought it was the Force, but like Snoke took credit for it, but it's
Mhm.
interesting. Did we cover crossing the first threshold?
We did not. You tried to cross the first threshold before we met our mentor, and that's okay. That's okay. Because sometimes the threshold could be lots of places. So step five,
Yeah.
crossing the first threshold. The hero commits wholeheartedly to the adventure. Let's see. So for me, the threshold for Poe and Poe's kind of middle steps here were kind of tricky for me because Poe's like on that ship doesn't like go anywhere, right? There's no like mountains to climb or like streams to cross or anything for Poe, right? So his steps here, crossing the first threshold, was a little trickier for me. I put for Poe, I think his threshold was when he sneaks Rose and Finn off the ship, basically. Kind of gets that plan in motion. That was the threshold for Poe for me, kind of going behind everyone's back there, committing wholeheartedly to his adventure, maybe to Finn's adventure. I think Finn's threshold is landing on Canto Bight, right? Got to go find the red palm bloom and see if you can get that slicer going. So I think Canto Bight is the threshold for Finn going into a new world there. And then for Rey, Rey's was tricky too. I think that her threshold to me is when she's taking on these lessons from Luke Skywalker, and kind of in that very first one, when he's trying to teach her about the Force, right? And he puts her hand on the rock, and the rocks start levitating, and then she, kind of immediately goes straight to the dark side, as Luke Skywalker say. I think that's her kind of crossing that threshold into the world of the Force.
Yeah, like I guess I was only able to really see crossing the first threshold for like Rose and Finn making it to Canto Bight.
Mhm.
Because it kind of just seems like Poe is kind of just in motion, but maybe it's like not like a literal I guess in some ways, like it's like the first leg of the road trip, I guess
Right,
like
sure.
meeting Holdo for Poe and it being like, oh, this is their plan. Um and then I guess like with Rey kind of getting settled on her special world Octo, and like learning from Luke
Mhm.
and Kylo Ren, that's something I saw too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there are a couple of those little thresholds, I guess you could say that Rey crosses there. And um, speaking with Kylo Ren, I guess you could also say that Poe's threshold moment is when there's the explosion on the ship, and Leia is sucked out into the vacuum of space, and he loses that mentor. I guess that could almost be seen as him, kind of crossing the threshold into the adventure, but um, that's not really something that Poe chooses to do or accepts to do or commits to doing. It's just kind of something that happens externally to Poe, which is fine. But yeah, his get a little bit trickier because they're all happening. It's within like the emotions and the mentality of Poe more so than like an actual like physical adventure that the rest of these characters are going on.
Yeah, and yeah, like The Last Jedi, like I think like some people are like I think that's a recurring theme, it's like some people are cool with it, some people are not. Um, you know, but I think like Canto Bite was kind of like a big part, like a big threshold, and it's kind of like
Mhm.
we kind of see like what's the what's the point, of it, even if like the military industrial complex exists in Star Wars, because why wouldn't it, like uh I mean we'll learn this later. It's like the point is to do good, like uh and yeah. So
Mhm.
interesting thoughts for later. So yeah, so for test allies and enemies, did you have the summary for like what that step is?
Yeah, so the hero explores the special world, faces trials, and makes friends and enemies. Again, Pose is a little trickier because he's not really meeting people. His big test, I guess, was the demotion, and then meeting Admiral Holdo, and experiencing life underneath of her command when she takes over for Leia there, who's been incapacitated. So that's who I had for Poe. I think for Finn. Finn and Rose there, they get jailed in Canto Bight. That's kind of the test, and they're going to, meet a ally, a shape-shifting ally, at the very least, and DJ, and then of course they have, the rest of the police and security forces there on Canto Bight that they're going to have to deal with there in that special world. And then for me, Rey has several because she's with Luke now. She's doing a bit of training, or she's at least, absorbing these lessons. So as she's going through kind of those three lessons, she's off doing her own lightsaber training and going through some different forms of that, and then also having these interactions with Kylo Ren. So she's beginning to explore and have revealed to her a bit of the backstory of the history between Luke Skywalker and Ben Solo. So I think that is Rey's test allies and enemies kind of section there. But who are your allies and enemies, and what are your tests, Cassia?
I don't know if I put down specific tests, kind of just like the tests we've mentioned earlier, but we kind of
Mhm.
have Rey, Kylo, and Luke teaching each other. Um, Finn, Rose, and DJ teaching each other, and Poe and Holdo teaching each other. That's what I saw.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's all kind of mashed up there in like a like a little bowl of test allies and enemies, kind of for each of the characters. They're all kind of going through these things, kind of at the same point of the film. So really, it's just kind of everything that they're dealing with on their own particular insular journeys, I guess. Within, they're not really pertaining too much to the other characters, so which is something that's kind of interesting. Much more kind of linear storytelling for each of these three characters before they ultimately come back together at the end. Speaking of getting places, Cassia, next up is the approach to the innermost cave. The hero nears
Yeah.
the center of the story and the special world. So where are the innermost caves? Is there one? Are there multiples? What do you think?
I mean, there was a literal cave where Rey
There
went
was.
to on
There
Octu.
was. There's a hole in the ground. Water came out of it. That's true.
She
It's creepy
sees,
looking. It is creepy
yeah,
looking.
she sees her parents, Mirror Mirror and Dathan, and then it kind of merges into one person who, in silhouette, I think was Ben, but
Mm-hmm.
or it could have been Rey, but approach to the innermost cave, I said like Rey goes to Kylo and Snoke, and then Finn and Rose sneak onto a First Order ship, and Poe leads a mutiny.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. I didn't quite have Poe, starting the mutiny up yet. I actually had question marks by Poe's because I didn't know what his innermost cave in the story was. I think maybe it's just kind of that at that point when he decides that he can no longer stand by and let Holdo rule. Here, I actually have the revolt as his ordeal, which is the next step. For Finn, the approach to the innermost cave, I thought that was probably that stolen ship when they get off of there, and then he begins to learn those lessons from DJ, right, about the arms dealings and all that kind of stuff. The military complex, kind of learning those lessons. I think that that's kind of the center of their story, en route to the First Order Star Destroyer there. And then for Rey, I had obviously the Dark Side Cavern that she ends up going down and does her cool snaps. That's pretty cool. I think you could probably also make the case that like the first time her and Kylo Ren touch through one of those little uh, force sessions that they're having together, and then obviously, getting into the little escape pod there on the Millennium Falcon and blasting herself off to Snoke's ship to go there and confront Kylo Ren and have an actual face-to-face conversation. I think is kind of the approach to the innermost cave for our characters there.
The Rashomon thing with Luke, Ben, and Rey was interesting as well. Forgot to
Hmm.
mention that. But then we kind of just see like it was out of character for Luke. Like he only thought about it for a second. Um, and then like Luke doesn't approve of like them touching hands over the fire, and her head's like destroyed, man. And
Yeah, it for sure
yeah,
gets destroyed. Yeah, Luke takes it out on that hut for sure.
it's funny because Luke doesn't fall. Um, it's just like a um he levitates before he hits the ground, you know. So that
Well,
was
yeah,
interesting.
if you're
Yeah.
gonna if you're gonna have the Force, you might as well use it for something. Breaking your fall, that seems good. It's kind of the opposite. There's another KOTOR uh, uh, comparison there on Tatooine. You have Bastila uses the Force to push Mission down, and then you have Luke using the Force to stop himself from being pushed down. So there you go.
Yeah. So the ordeal, I kind of saw it as Rose and Finn are caught. Holdo sacrifices herself, and then Rey and Kylo deal with Snoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as pretty similar here. So the ordeal is the hero faces the greatest challenge yet and experiences the death and rebirth. Finn, yeah, captured by the First Order. That's what I had there. Thanks a lot, DJ, for turning us in. Appreciate that. Poe, I had, as I mentioned in the previous one, I had kind of Poe's, uh, revolting against Holdo, right? Starting that up, I had that as kind of the ordeal, and then ultimately ends up being, stunned by Leia. So he's quite literally experiencing like a death, kind of in that moment. And then for Rey, yeah, she gets on board there. She has her confrontation with Kylo Ren, and he takes her before Snoke, who tosses her around. Rey gets tossed around a lot here in the first two films.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Hopefully her head's okay, you know.
That's right.
Um, yeah, so if it sounds like I am going through papers, it's because I am. Um,
It's the Jedi archives right there.
the Sacred Jedi texts.
That's right.
Let's see. Yeah, it is funny that like Rey goes to Kylo. Um, and she kind of like put herself in like a little like I don't know, like Snow White coffin almost like and like had a whole another outfit, did her hair and everything. So I'm like, that's an interesting choice you made there.
Well,
After
yeah,
3 days.
she's been stuck on that island with Luke.
Yeah, she's
Gotta
like,
fancy
might as
yourself
well
up.
go to.
There's probably, change of clothes and stuff on the Millennium Falcon. You're not going to go do that like every day. That's a lot of stairs to go up and down to get down there. So
For sure.
they have porgs on board now, so that's good.
So the ordeal, I kind of saw it as Rose and Finn are caught.
Hmm.
Holdo sacrifices herself. Rey and Kylo deal with Snoke. Um, and I think like this is like the most interesting part visually in the movie, I think. Like it's beautiful, with the Star Destroyer like getting cut across,
Hmm.
Um and then Rey and Kylo dealing with Snoke and how they take care of Snoke and then how they fight, and then what did you think about the ordeal?
So the ordeal, yeah, as I mentioned, yeah, Poe's is trying to get the revolting against Holdo there, getting that started. Finn, captured by the First Order, and yeah, Rey is there with Kylo Ren confronting Snoke, which gets us into the reward, which is the hero experiences the consequences of surviving death. So for me, I found that one a little bit clearer here for Poe. So in the ordeal for me, Poe was there. Stunned by Leia, kind of taking a sacrificial death, so to speak, and then reawakens, rebirth on that other transport ship, kind of in time to see Holdo's sacrifice, right? He has kind of that dialogue there with Leia, and then is able to see what Holdo's plan was here. So that's the reward for Poe. For Finn, I think that his reward, it was a little less clear. I think specifically for Finn. We had him being captured by the First Order there in the ordeal. So I think that the reward for Finn is that he's kind of able to defeat Captain Phasma, right? She was, I guess, maybe meant to be kind of like the ghost that was haunting him throughout this, potentially. I don't know. But he cracks her. Face mask open, and he's able to see that there was a person inside, and it's to her that he can declare himself, a rebel, right, a member of the resistance. So I think that that is the reward for Finn. He's finally kind of accepting his role in this, right? He's been very reluctant thus far to fully commit to the cause, so to speak, just looking out for himself and Rey. And then for Rey, I think the reward there of facing off against Snoke and meeting with Kylo, obviously, of that sweet fight in the throne room. That's pretty awesome. Snoke has been cut in half by that lightsabers. That's good. That's good. That's quite the reward there. But I think that the big reward for Rey really is she's been able to talk to Kylo Ren now, to Ben Solo, and realize that they're on different paths, right? Their ideals are not going to align in this instance, right? She went with the hopes that he was going to join up with the Resistance, and that's not going to be the case. So I think that her reward is just that knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for reward, I put Snoke dies and the massive First Order ship is destroyed. Is it called the Supremacy? I always forget.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, so um I also do have to say that I did like the scene with Luke um talking with Yoda, and it's like the greatest teacher failure is we are what
Hmm.
they grow
Hmm.
beyond. Um and then Phasma actually does something. Did we see her eyebrow?
I don't know if you can see her eyebrow. You definitely see her eye. Um, there is that mask gets cracked open, but
Yeah, I was like, do we have a canonical blonde person in Star Wars? But who knows? Um, like by which I mean blonde woman, but because
mm,
there are
mm,
plenty
hmm,
of
hmm.
blonde, guys and stuff like in, and I mean like I'm separating let's see what it is, movies from TV shows, but yeah, it's funny. Hux almost shoots Kylo Ren. I don't know. He's a schemer, you know. And then Yeah, it is interesting because after this moment, we still have a lot of movie left, you know? Um,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
the road back, I put the battle on Crate. Rey and Kylo separate, you know? Uh, what did you put for the road back?
Yeah, so the road back, the hero returns to the ordinary world or continues to an ultimate destination. I just wrote Crate. That's where the Resistance is going to land. That's where uh, Finn and Rose are going after they hop off board the Star Destroyer that's blowing up there, and that's where Rey is making her way to as well as soon as she can get picked up there. So yeah, I think the road back is just everyone going back to Crate, and we're finally going to get these storylines to tie together a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So they fight. It's a cool looking battle. Um, and the red on the salt looks cool, and I do love the quote, "Not fighting what we hate, saving what we love." Uh,
Hmm.
then Luke appears with Han's dice, you know. Um, Luke stalls so they can escape and he dies, and I I kind of I don't know. I really personally like the resurrection step because the resistance survives and so does Finn. Luke dies to give the galaxy and the resistance hope. You know, like I think a lot of people didn't like how Luke was handled in The Last Jedi. I can kind of understand some of it, but I'm actually okay with like Luke dying most of all, you know? It just seemed kind of mythic, you know?
Hmm.
And Campbellian. But what did you think?
Yeah, I think Luke's passing on uh, into the Force, I think, is great. I think that it works perfectly for his character, and um, I think that in this instance, yeah, the resurrection steps here for our characters are tremendous. I like them a lot here in this story. So, yeah, in addition to Luke there, who also goes through quite a character journey, you could probably do one of these for him as well if you felt so inclined. But getting that lesson, from Yoda, and then his sacrifice that harkens back to Obi-Wan Kenobi in the very first film, the very first lesson that he gets from the Jedi, right, is strike me down and I'll become more powerful, right? He can be more powerful as being one with the Force, and Luke kind of finally is taking those final lessons from his master. I think that that's really really beautiful. So what about our three mains here? So we got Poe. So Poe, for his resurrection step, he's getting his kind of final lesson from Leia, and she is saying, okay, you learned all your things, now you're the leader, so lead the way. Follow those crystal foxes. Finn, of course, he survives that crash, and gets his final lesson from Rose, right? So Rose is telling him, yeah, to fight for the things that you love, not for, not against the things that you hate. So he's taking his final lesson there, and Rey is taking the lessons of the Force, I guess, that she's learned from Luke, and quite literally using the Force to save the rebellion, right? So he's passed on that knowledge, becoming one with the Force, and passing that on to her, as potentially the Last Jedi, depending on how you want to use it. But she makes or Luke Skywalker makes the lines, that being a Jedi is not about moving rocks, but that's literally what she's doing at the end here to save the Resistance. So.
Yeah. Um, it's it's an interesting kind of last few scenes in Star Wars. So we do have our ending, on the Falcon, and then we kind of have the looking up to the stars ending. And both endings are great, you know.
Mhm.
It One note I did just make because I thought it was hilarious. Ray and
Okay.
Poe meet, and Poe says, "I
Mm-hmm.
know." Uh, they were almost an item in the original episode 9.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that would have been a different way to take it. That would have definitely been some sort of I don't know, an interesting way for those characters to interact, especially because she had um such kind of a close bond with Finn there, particularly in the first film. And then, his journey gets kicked off basically as a desire to save her from, being captured, to suffering the same fate as the rest of the resistance. So that would have been interesting. That would have been an interesting return. So speaking of returns, return with the elixir, the hero returns with something to improve the ordinary world. The resistance lives to fight another day. The Jedi archives did not burn down in that tree. That's good. Or the Jedi texts, I guess, not the Jedi archives. I guess that is the Jedi archives. It's all that's left of them, maybe. And then yeah, you get the hope of another dose of daylight, right? It's like the sun, if you only believe in it when you can see it, then that's good. And then of course you get Broom Boy. Could have done the hero's journey for Broom Boy. That would have been good. I like he's wearing Rose's ring there. With the little Rebel Alliance symbol on it. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And yeah, that ends The Last Jedi.
Yeah. So, yeah, some people love it, some people hate it. Some people are mid on it, but yeah, there's the hero's journey for that film. So, any other final thoughts from you, Brian?
No, just I was excited to watch The Last Jedi. It's actually probably the Star Wars film that I've watched the most over the last 5 or 6 years, probably. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, it was always good to just go back and rewatch that one. It's fun. My wife asked me last night. I was watching it, and she's like, "Why are you you're starting with this middle one?" I was like, "Well, we're talking about it on the show." But yeah, it's I'm pretty high on it, so I was excited to go back and look at these steps. And the interesting thing so far, and we'll see how the Rise of Skywalker ends up going, is the hero's journeys in the sequel trilogy are not quite as clear cut as they were. I think that they're definitely still there, but I think it takes a lot more, thinking about than I was expecting to do for these films. So that's been interesting. It's been an interesting kind of experiment here going through these newer films too. So yeah, that's about it.
for sure. Um, yeah, so I guess that's it for today, but may the force be with you always.
The Old Republic podcast can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, as well as everywhere else that Anchor podcasts are distributed. Subscriptions, reviews, and shares help us out.
And if you want to connect with the podcast on Twitter, we can be found at Old Republic Pod. And if you want to connect with me, I can be found on Instagram at astro_droid_.
You can find us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/Old Republic Podcast. Our intro and outro themes were composed by Dennis S. Mowers at DennisSMowersMusic.com.
This episode of the Old Republic Podcast has been brought to you by Nicky Dog from Patreon. May the Force be with you. We will be back soon. Bye for now.